Well, can a man give birth? Yes is the emphatic answer. The LGBTIQA plus political movement and its mainstream media barrackers want you to believe. Trans and pregnant is the latest indoctrination piece produced by TV New Zealand as part of the propaganda war against biology. Now, before I bring in Bob McCoskrie of Family First New Zealand to help us understand this confusing set of circumstances, let's take a look at the teaser from the TVNZ documentary.
Having our own is just something else.
There's people out there who might not understand.
They love each other and this is their life story.
Now, Bob, thanks very much for joining us today with this. Is what we're seeing on screen simply just a beautiful love story? And shouldn't we all just be rejoicing that finally people like Frankie and Rayway can have a family?
Hi, Lyle. Good to be on your show. No, this is clearly indoctrination. This is trying to persuade people that not only women can get pregnant and give birth and breastfeed, that men can get pregnant as well and chest feed and everything associated with transgender ideology. So what it's doing is, and I know we're going to watch a couple of clips from the documentary, but what it actually does is reinforce biology, but what New Zealand On Air, which funded this program to the tune of $250,000 of taxpayer funding, what they're trying to do is push the trans idea that it's not only women can get pregnant. And, of course, most people know that that is just stupid thinking to say that a man can get pregnant and that a woman can have a penis, but the powers that be, the elites, think that the more they can push this down and more they can indoctrinate us, that they'll try and persuade us otherwise. But I personally think this documentary has done the exact opposite, which you'll see when you watch some of the clips.
Yeah, well, we're going to go through it and it's quite confronting, but I'm still just a little bit stunned by what you just said a moment ago, that this was taxpayer funded, and you've got a Conservative Nationals government under Christopher Luxon there in New Zealand. This is extraordinary. How does this get through the gates?
Well, look, it would never have been achieved on a commercial basis because nobody's interested in it. This is part of the indoctrination. There are, unfortunately, groups that are involved at a level of funding that have been around for a long time, and I guess it's an area that really hasn't been cleaned out by the government. The big question, of course, Lyle, is whether the government will tackle this. And it's always been my beef with conservative-leaning parties, is that they're not only conservative by name, but they're conservative by nature. They get into power, and sure, they don't push a lot of this social engineering and this radical ideology, but they don't stop it either. They don't correct everything. And I think that's been one of the refreshing things about the new president-elect of the United States, is that he says he's going to fix it, and people have responded, and they actually want that. I only wish that some of the conservative leaders in both Australia and New Zealand started listening to that same argument.
Absolutely. What you've described is exactly the problem we have here in Australia. Maybe it's an Antipodean problem, but let's hope that what happens in the United States might flow through. Well, let's take a look at some of the assumptions behind this TVNZ taxpayer-funded documentary. Here's the backstory of the couple as told to TVNZ.
I knew I was trans from about 6. I can remember asking for a David Beckham haircut, and I was able to have my David Beckham haircut, shopped at Hallenstein's, wore Planet 8, which was really cool back then. I grew up in Wanganui. My parents migrated from South Africa just before I was born. Wanganui is quite a conservative place. There weren't many other queer people I knew, so it was quite challenging. I actually started socially transitioning at 18. So I lived as a man for 2 years and then went off to the endocrinologist and started testosterone. I've been on testosterone for 6 years. I get an injection every 3 months that maintains my testosterone levels in my body. After a few years, I felt comfortable enough in myself that I felt that other people saw me as the man I am to go and start dating other men. And I'm exclusively attracted to cis gay men, meaning people who have been born male and identify as male.
I knew from a very long time ago, and I actually had visions of being attracted to a trans guy.
So, Bob, decode for us what's going on in the lives of these two people. It's very confusing.
Well, I got out my Babylon Bee dictionary of wokeness to try and interpret exactly what was being said. So, look, the ideology is there straight away. 6 years old, knew that they were the opposite sex, which most 6-year-olds aren't even thinking about that. They're thinking about who they're going to play with and what mum's given them for lunch at school. But, apparently they knew. And then there was a few lines here. I've just written them down because, I have to get my head around it myself. Exclusively attracted to cis gay men. So that means that she's attracted to gay men, but the problem is that if they're gay men, they're not attracted to her because she's biologically female. And then the partner had visions of being attracted to a trans guy, which is actually a biological woman. So if you think not too hard, Lyle, you've actually got two heterosexuals here, so they're not gay, but they fit the LGBT community because we've got a bit of trans and a bit of bisexuality so that they can be part of this minority group and fit into this rainbow, so to speak. So it is so confusing watching it, and even as I explained to people that actually it was a heterosexual couple here, that sort of blew people's minds as well.
It does. Well, and that's exactly right. It is a heterosexual couple. Frankie is clearly a woman who has a vagina. I don't know whether the full TVNZ documentary mentioned whether she has undergone a double mastectomy. I don't know, but she clearly
has.
She has. Okay, there you go. So that's not in the clips we're about to see, but she's got a beard and she's with a man, and clearly they go through the process of this is not two men producing a baby. So let's move on. Now we move on to their desire to have a child.
I worry about the wider perceptions on society, both as a bi person myself and Frankie being a trans gay man. Our dream is to have the child as naturally as possible.
Now, they're talking about natural things. Aren't Frankie and Rayway, and I hope I'm pronouncing Rayway's name correctly, are they trying to tell us that it is not natural for Frankie to be a woman, yet they want her to have the baby as naturally as possible?
Well, this is the interesting thing about the program, and this is what I said in my commentary on Substack, was that they are basically reinforcing biology by admitting that actually, and in fact in the clips with the gynecologist, admitting that actually it's getting things to happen normally and naturally. They use those words. And of course, for all of us, we know that naturally only a male and a female, only a man and a woman can have a child. And here you've got two people. I mean, the producer of the show and the one of the key people that was funding the program, they were saying, oh, look, it's an amazing program because it's two men who love each other who want a baby. It's just that one of them can have a child. Well, fact check, actually, it's a male and a female. And the reason they can have a baby is because that's exactly what nature dictates. So, deep down, they're trying to push their ideology out in front, but behind all this is actually the reinforcing of nature and biology. So it's a spectacular own goal in my opinion.
Well, let's listen to Frankie and Rayway describe the process.
Do you think you'll be able to conceive naturally without any assistance?
They do indicate that when you are on testosterone, it can inhibit a person's ability to reproduce, but there is a common misconception that being on testosterone suppresses reproduction entirely. If we could keep me on testosterone, but at a lower level, that would curb some of the concerns around dysphoria from coming off testosterone and my body slowly returning back to a somewhat female form.
Now, Bob, we've got people here trying to play God, haven't we? I mean, Frankie told the New Zealand Herald that she had to, quote, wait 7 months before her body burned through the testosterone stores I had before we were given the green light to start to conceive. So she thinks she can just dial up and down the testosterone, dial up and down her masculinity as it suits her.
Yeah, I mean, she really did shoot herself in the foot, because her final statement was, until I get to a female form. Well, that's exactly what we said, and that's why only women can get pregnant. So once again, even by their own statements and their own admissions, they are acknowledging that you need to be a female with purging yourself of the wrong sex hormones, as we call them. Some people call them cross-sex hormones. I think wrong sex hormones is a better label. And actually bringing them back to a natural state. Now, once again, I just think this is a beautiful picture of reinforcing that only women can get pregnant, and even someone who has tried to deny biological reality is having to make changes and go off wrong sex hormones in order to get to that state again. So it's a beautiful story they're telling us. They just don't realise it, and that's the irony of the whole documentary.
Well, let's watch the final part of this beautiful story. We know that the LGBTIQA plus political activists, they hate the idea that people can detransition from being, a trans man or trans woman and going back to their natal sex. You, of course, had Chloe Cole, one of the world's most famous detransitioners to New Zealand recently, speaking at your conference. But this next clip is insightful because it explains the process of Frankie's detransition back to female so she can have the baby. And of course, we have the gynaecologist affirming all this.
Anything about Frankie being trans or having had those hormonal replacement therapies that may impact on pregnancy?
There should not be, because once the uterus has had a period of time away from the suppression of the testosterone, it's an amazing organ, actually. It can respond to the estrogens and progesterones that pregnancy involves, and the pregnancy should progress in a normal way.
Now, Bob, there's nothing normal about this, is there?
It's amazing when we let biology run its course, and that's exactly what the doctor is saying and reinforcing to them, and reinforcing the fact that you need... I mean, what this documentary really is about returning someone who's pretending to be a man back to being the woman they were created as, giving them the ability to have a child. So, in fact, it's not breaking news. When they actually announced this program and they talked about, it follows a trans man's journey on getting pregnant, I put on X, breaking news, woman gets pregnant and has baby, because that's really all the story is about. It's just that the woman happens to have a beard and has been trying to become a male, but to allow nature to take its course no longer. Now, of course, the other irony here, Lyle, is that, as you know, and we believe children have a right to a biological mother and father, that they know who they are. This child is living with its biological mother and father. It's just that the adults don't actually realise that they're the biological mother and father. Well, perhaps deep down they do, but they just won't admit it. One other interesting thing that I don't think I told you about, Lyle, in the documentary is that there is a clip where they talk about the fact that they're not going to identify the gender of the child.
Gee.
That would be hypocritical for them to do that.
Yeah, that's child abuse. That's just child
about
abuse.
A year after the child was born, they appeared on TVNZ to do a follow-up puff piece, and they were calling the little boy him and he. I mean, that was just
bigots.
Transphobia. I couldn't believe the binary approach. I mean, the child was only one. Had the 1-year-old decided what gender he was going to be? So that's why I say, and there's also this other beautiful clip, which I know you haven't got time to show, but they actually show the ultrasound at 13 weeks. And once again, it's probably one of the most pro-life images I've seen on state TV for a long time. It reinforces, and they actually make the comment, it's not an alien, it's actually a person. It's reinforced that. So, the point I made was actually, while they're pushing ideology, what they're deep down doing is reinforcing biology, nature, the need for hormones, having periods, ovulation, everything to do with woman that's involved in getting pregnant. So it was a celebration of motherhood. It's just that the adults in the room can't admit it.
Yeah. and brought to you by your taxpayers from a Conservative
thank
government.
you very much for reminding us.
Bob, I think the other dangerous thing about what I heard that gynaecologist say was that the uterus is a wonderful organ, which of course it is, and he seemed to be saying it's quite safe and natural to dose yourself up on testosterone and then dial it back, and somehow you can just go in and out of, womanhood if you're a trans male. But it's not always as easy as that, is it? I mean, many young people in particular, if they go on puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones, they end up being sterilised for life. And of course, Frankie has lost her breasts, of course. We can't breastfeed that baby. No. So this is not a consequence-free medical procedure.
No, we know with puberty blockers there's issues around bone density. There's also fertility being affected as well. And I actually, one of my board members is a paediatrician, and he sent me through some research just around this because, for a woman to be taking the levels of testosterone necessary to become male, like Frankie would have been, is quite as significant. And there's not a lot of research in this area because it's just not the done thing, because it's not the normal thing. But my paediatrician doctor sent through some of the research that says, quote, human exposures at any time in pregnancy, either to the testosterone itself or to drugs in the same class, have been associated with developmental toxicity, growth restriction, structural anomalies, functional behavioural deficits, or death. The drug should not be used in pregnancy. Now, remember that in that documentary clip that you played, they said they were just reducing it to a minor level to enable ovulation and the periods to start up again, which is what the gynaecologist wanted. There was also this: elevated serum testosterone levels in women are significantly associated with an increased risk of breast cancer development. Now, how does that apply to a biological woman who has removed her breasts already? Does that have some flow-on effect? So, there is concerns. In fact, there's some here around testosterone associated with increased risk of ovarian cancer overall. These are the questions that were never asked in the documentary. It was all, this is just a wonderful example of creating a family, and it's a man who's getting pregnant. Wow, this is wonderful. Let's spend taxpayer dollars to indoctrinate this type of ideology. But as I say, at the end of the program, people were left in no doubt that actually nature and biology had the final say.
It sure did. And shame on TVNZ and shame on the Luxon government for putting taxpayer money into this propaganda. It's actually dangerous and it's harmful. Bob, it's craziness, but before I let you go, there was something else that was completely crazy that captured media headlines here in Australia this past week from your parliament. Let's take a look.
Te Pāti Māori, e ono ngā pōti e whakahe. Kawana, ka whakamanu whiriti a koe, kamate,
The House is suspended until the ringing of the bells. The gallery is to be cleared.
Bob, what on earth was going on there?
So there is a bill before Parliament which is talking about the Treaty of Waitangi. Since the treaty has been signed in 1840, there has been moves to interpret it in different ways, and there has been concerns about the principles that have been attached to it and whether they are creating a divided nation or whether they're actually bringing all peoples together. So a bill has been introduced. Look, whether you support the bill or not and think that the principles need to be fine-tuned, there has been a huge outcry, especially from the more radical aspect of Māori through the Te Pāti Māori party, which got about 3% of the overall vote at the last election, so it has about 5 or 6 MPs. This was their youngest MP who was making this stand and did the haka. Once again, I think the rolling of the eyes by the Speaker of the House sort of summed up what a lot of people thought, because there seems to be a general perception that a lot of people don't understand the debate. In fact, the polling suggests that people sort of support the bill, but also a lot of people don't understand it. So, the argument is let the debate happen. However, there is a group that doesn't want this debate to even happen. There's a hikoi, which is a march happening that is going to be at Parliament this week. So there will be a lot of noise. This haka went all around the world because obviously it was a disruption in Parliament, a little bit like, and of course there was this dramatic ripping up of the bill. Yeah. Although Nancy Pelosi ripped up.
That's right.
Yeah, she ripped up Trump's speech to the nation in 2020. Yeah. So it wasn't the first time. But it was disruptive. And look, Lyle, if I went on to a marae, I would observe protocol. In fact, I'd probably have about, a half-hour lead-in to understand what the protocol was when I went on the marae. Now, there's protocol in Parliament as well. This was a disrespect for Parliament. There was also aggressive getting in front and into the face of the sponsor of the bill as well. There was even the pointing of this gun gesture as well, which a lot of people didn't like. I think a lot of people are just saying, hey, let's calm the temperature down. Yeah. Let's have this open and robust debate, as uncomfortable as it is, but let's not sort of sink to this level. But look, worldwide, the haka is quite a spectacular thing to watch, and so it's getting lots of views, but it's getting both positive response and negative response as well.
Well, it certainly was a spectacle. I'd prefer to see the haka on the rugby field, not in the Parliament, and not done as an intimidatory sort of mechanism. Yeah. We've got our Lydia Thorpe here in the Australian Parliament. Looks like you've got a cluster of them there in the New Zealand Parliament. We could do without it. Bob, thanks so much for giving of your time and for your insights today.
Good to be with you, Lyle.